start with the chronology case. On the morning of 9 February 1915, one of the plaintiff partner, Mr. Arthur, was going out to lunch. He was leaving the office and suddenly the clerk came up to him and said he wanted £2 for petty cash and produced a cheque for signature. The clerk had repeatedly presented the cheque for signature to get petty cash, but usually it will use £3. Mr. Arthur asked him why it was not £3 on his occasion. The clerk replied that the £2 will be sufficient. On the next day, the clerk did not come to the company. Mr. Arthur took the opportunity to look through the clerk book and found matter which is so excited his suspicion that he consulted his solicitor. On 11 February, both he and the solicitor went to the bank. They found that the clerk had presented a cheque for £120 had been paid to him. The clerk was a thief and absconded with money. His book was subsequently examined, and in the result, several discrepancies were found. After Mr. Arthur left the office, Clancy proceeded to complete the unfinished cheque. His employer had unquestionably authorized him to finish the cheque for £2 and cash it at a bank. However, he entered £120 in the place provided forwards, and 1 to the left and 0 to the right of the two in the space allocated for the latter figure, resulting in a comparable figure of £120. Subsequently, he took the cheque to a bank and cashed it over the counter virtually immediately before leaving.
So the issue is whether Mr. Arthur neglected to exercise his customer duty, 2. Whether Mr. Arthur was careless in his cheque payment, and whether London Joint Stock Bank is liable for paying the people whose names appear on the cheque. The bank has the right to expect the customer to take due care when issuing the cheque. Next, the bank has right to be indemnified for loss when carrying out a service for a customer. Based on this case, the alternation is not clearly seen and the bank is not responsible for any fraud. A banker's job entails collecting money and the cheque that the customer has paid in. The banker has a duty to exercise care and skill. The banker needs to pay on demand all the cheques on account provided that they are drawn in the proper form. Based on this case, the customer did not exercise reasonable care in drawing a cheque. So in this case, there is one mistake that made by the defendant. The defendant had actually breached one of the duties of the customer, which is that the customer must exercise reasonable care in drawing their cheques. So we can say that the customer negligence in their duties can lead to a bank mistake.
Next is the types of relationship between customer and banker. In this case, the relation between banker and customer is that of debtor and creditor, with a super added obligation on the part of banker to honor the customer's checks of the account is in credit. Also, if a customer account is improperly debited due to a bank error, the bank may be held accountable under the heading paycheck with an alteration without customer's agreement. For court heard of this case after hearing the Lynch judge statement, the court concluded that the plaintiff did not act negligently when signing the cheque. Aside from that, based on the unique relationship between a bank and its client, the court found the company to have breached a specific obligation owed to the client.
The conclusion is that customers must draw check carefully to avoid miss their banker or facilitating forgery. It is not a requirement to have clerks who the client perceives to be trustworthy. It is the banker's specific job to prepare the order. So, both sides should do the best thing to solve the problem. Firstly, the obligation of the banker to honor the customer check if the account is in credit. Second, a check written by a customer is a legal order for the bank to pay the specified amount within the specified time frame. Thirdly, it's undeniable that the consumer has an obligation to take reasonable care in check drawing to avoid misleading the bank. Lastly, he writes the check in a way that facilitates fraud. He has breached his responsibility to the banker and is liable for any damage incurred by the bank.